that the respondents had committed an act of treating in breach of Section 64(2) of the Representation of the People Act. Regarding the allegation of bribery through the implementation of the PRB report, an increase in basic retirement pension, the Supreme Court held that, and I quote, "They were electoral promises contained in electoral manifestos and made in the course of normal electoral campaigning. They were no more, no less than a statement of intention of a future eventual government," unquote. The Supreme Court therefore came to the conclusion that the proposals concerning the PRB report, which were made by l'Alliance Mauricienne and not by respondent number 1 as an individual candidate, did not constitute acts of bribery. Regarding the issue of basic retirement pension, the Supreme Court likewise held that the announcement in the increase of the basic retirement pension did not constitute an act of bribery. The Supreme Court therefore concluded that it was an electoral promise contained in an electoral manifesto and was done in the course of normal electoral campaigning. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council has also underlined the following central factual findings of the Supreme Court in relation to the announcement for the increase in the basic retirement pension, and I quote, "In terms of a candidate's duty under the ESC's Code of Conduct to abstain from resorting to electoral promises that were untrue and unrealizable, it was an admitted fact that when l'Alliance Mauricienne formed the new government, the proposal to increase the BRP to 9,000 rupees as from December 2019 had been effected," unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is also apposite for me to mention the observations of the Supreme Court with regard to the accusation of undue influence. In fact, the Supreme Court concluded that, and I quote, "It is hard to see how the facts relied upon by the petitioner, namely, 1, the trumpeting by the MBC of the basic retirement pension announcement, 2, the appointment of the Director General and board members of the MBC by respondent number 1 and their alleged role in the running of the MBC, and 3, the ESC communiqué, could be said to amount to undue influence by fraudulent contrivance. The petitioner has been unable to establish that there was intentional deception or false and material misrepresentation. We find that the petitioner has failed to establish that the respondent by themselves or by another person on their behalf have exercised undue influence by fraudulent contrivance. This ground must accordingly fail," unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Supreme Court finally concluded that the respondents' election at the 2019 general election should not be avoided by reason of bribery, treating, or undue influence. The petition was accordingly dismissed by the Supreme Court with costs. Mr. Speaker, sir, as the House is also aware, the opposition, being dissatisfied with the judgment of the Supreme Court, subsequently appealed to the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council has, in its judgment delivered on 16th October 2023, endorsed all the findings and conclusions of the Supreme Court and unanimously dismissed on all grounds the appeal lodged by Mr. Dayal. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is apposite for me to highlight the following pertinent findings of the Privy Council judgment. And I quote, "The board points in particular to the following features that support the Supreme Court's conclusion. 1. The proposals were made in open and public, allowing criticism and debate. 2. The proposals had been the subject of prior political debate and carried transparent underlying reasoning. 3. The BRP and the PRB report proposals related to manifesto pledges. 4. The proposals related to important and sensitive topics of public interest. 5. The subject matter of the proposals was also the subject of proposals by other candidates or political parties. 6. The proposals were generic, of nationwide impact, not limited to members of the constituency. 7. There were several weeks between the proposals and the polling day, and over a month between the SBICC event and polling day. 8. The proposed benefit was not contingent on particular individuals voting in a certain way. 9. There was no quid pro quo and or element of bargaining between candidate and voter. 10. There was no question of private funding behind the proposals. 11. Implementation of the proposal was contingent on future political events, including parliamentary vote. 12. There was no finding that the proposals were unreasonable and that they carried any element of deception and or extreme exaggeration, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council further observed that, and I quote, "The literal and mechanistic approach advocated for Mr. Dayal would also lead to absurd results against which there is an interpretive presumption. It would make normal political campaigning in the run-up to an election impossible and undermine the constitutional principle of free and fair elections. It would have the effect that a candidate could never campaign on a general policy relating, for example, to taxation or social welfare, where the impact would be to confer a financial benefit on a subset of electors. Many measures announced in political meetings or party manifestos have financial implications for particular groups of the electoral community," unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Privy Council held that the Supreme Court had made clear findings of fact with which there was no basis for appellate interference. Mr. Speaker, sir, while endorsing the findings and conclusions of the Supreme Court over the alleged act of bribery surrounding the increase in basic retirement pension and treating at the SBICC event, the Privy Council has further observed that, and I quote, "But in any event, a fair reading of Mr. Jugnauth's speech makes it clear that he was not making a personal commitment to provide the financial benefit in question, which he was not in a position to give in any event, but rather a commitment on behalf of his party, the l'Alliance Mauricienne. See, for example, the following extracts from his speech, and they quote again from my speech: "In our next mandate, we will double your pension, we will bring it to 13,500 rupees. You know, when I give my words, as we had given our word in 2014, you know I'm a man of my word, we will keep our promise." The SBICC event was, however, more than a month away from polling day. In any event, any inferences to be drawn from the timing of the event cannot assist him in circumstances where it was the Ministry of Social Security and not any of the first to third respondents which provided the food, drink, and transport. Further, given that this was an annual celebration with nothing unsurprising or untoward about any of its arrangements, attended by voters from all over Mauritius and not just the constituency, with no evidence that any voter was in fact corrupted, the Supreme Court was fully entitled to conclude that there was no basis for any finding of illegal treating. Given the Supreme Court's findings of fact, there is only one possible conclusion in relation to treating, namely that none of the respondents could be said to be guilty of unlawful treating for the purpose of Section 64(2) as a result of the provision of food, drink, or transport at the SBICC event, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, the decision of the Privy Council in this particular case and the dismissal of other election petitions by the Supreme Court or their voluntary withdrawal by the petitioners themselves have put an end, well, hopefully, to the sinister campaign orchestrated by this opposition which, en très mauvais perdant, had been making all sorts of unfounded allegations and accusations about bribery, treating, election fraud, and rigging, and whatnot, following their defeat at the last general election. This opposition instigated controversy and protests in the country contesting the election, which all the regional and international election observer missions had concluded to be free and fair. Mr. Speaker, sir, I must say that our electoral system, which is inclusive, transparent, and responsive to the concerns of all stakeholders, has stood the test of time and served the country well by contributing to its social and political stability. This system has, prior to the 2019 general election, garnered widespread satisfaction among all stakeholders involved in the electoral process and the citizens at large. International observers, such as the African Union, SADC, the Electoral Commission Forum of SADC, and the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, all have consistently provided favorable assessments and reports, including for the 2019 general election. Mr. Speaker, sir, but what is most regrettable in their action is the damage they have done to the reputation of our electoral management bodies and of the country as a whole. They made unsubstantiated allegations and spread rumors, casting aspersion persistently on the integrity and reputation of the Electoral Supervisory Commission and the Electoral Commissioner, whose competence and professionalism in electoral matters have always been recognized and acknowledged both locally and internationally. The former Prime Minister and leader of the Labour Party dared to even attack the judiciary when he alleged that a judge had been meeting a minister with regard to his election petition. Mr. Speaker, sir, their accusations also called into question the integrity of the 13,400 public officers whose services had been retained by the Office of the Electoral Commissioner for the conduct of the 2019 general election, including the returning officers and deputy returning officers who hold very senior positions at the judiciary, the Attorney General's office, and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. These officers, along with all election staff, are appointed by the Public Service Commission on the recommendation of the Electoral Supervisory Commission. I must also add that all the election staff are appointed following an exercise for expression of interest by way of a circular issued by the Office of the Electoral Commissioner. Mr. Speaker, sir, we on this side of the House, we have always had great trust and confidence in our electoral management bodies, which are among the most important pillars of our democracy. Without underestimating the harm which had been caused to these institutions' reputation and morale of its officers, we are convinced that the dismissal of the electoral petitions and the observations made by the Privy Council in the judgment in question will clear all the doubts and confusion that have been instilled in the minds of the people by this opposition about the credibility of elections in Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Office of the Electoral Commissioner has always adhered to best practices and standards, and all the processes are subject to close scrutiny. It is also noteworthy that for the 2019 general elections, a significant number of polling and counting agents were deployed. I am informed that in fact there were 8,106 polling agents and 4,851 counting agents of all parties, including the opposition parties, deployed for that election. Mr. Speaker, sir, I must also underline the fact that the whole exercise for voters' registration and the conduct of elections are supervised by the Electoral Supervisory Commission in line with its mandate under the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are confident that the Electoral Supervisory Commission and the Office of the Electoral Commissioner will continue to demonstrate their commitment to organize transparent and credible elections in the future and take all necessary measures provided for in the legislation to uphold the integrity of the electoral process. Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to expenses incurred by government in relation to this Privy Council case, I am informed that as at to date, the Office of the Electoral Commissioner has disbursed an amount of £21,235 representing fees for counsel, attorney, and filing fees. An amount of £91,605.71, comprising mainly of fees for counsel and attorney and other administrative costs, remains to be paid by the Office of the Electoral Commissioner. Moreover, an additional amount of £1,765 representing attorney fees and filing fees is being paid by the Attorney General's Office. This will bring the total to £114,605.71 for the Office of the Electoral Commissioner only. This is equivalent to around 6,300,000 rupees. In addition, an amount of 158,345 rupees has been disbursed by the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development to meet the cost for the attendance of the law officers from the Attorney General's Office at the Privy Council on behalf of the Office of the Electoral Commissioner in connection with this case. I am also informed that an amount of 2,952,500 rupees has been disbursed by the Mauritius Broadcasting Corporation in terms of legal fees in connection with this appeal case. Further claims are expected by the embassy for this same case. Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to expenses to be incurred by the Electoral Supervisory Commission, I am informed that invoices relating to fees for counsel and attorney have not been received yet. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a matter of regret that, in spite of the solid reputation enjoyed by our electoral management bodies, both locally and internationally, the opposition chose to tarnish the image of these institutions by making vile attacks on the person of the Electoral Commissioner and the members of the Electoral Supervisory Commission, and even going to the extent of asking for their resignation. Their actions seriously undermine public trust and confidence in these institutions, which are vital for our democracy. Mr. Speaker, sir, I must here point out that in the Democracy Index 2022, published by the Economist Intelligence Unit, Mauritius was ranked 21st out of 167 countries as a full democracy, with an overall score of 8.14 out of 10 points. Mauritius retained its position as the leader in democracy in Africa, as it is the only country and nation in sub-Saharan Africa and the entire region to top the list in this category. In fact, Mauritius is positioned in the same league as the member countries of the G20, namely Australia, Canada, Germany, Japan, and the United Kingdom, ranked in the top 20. It is also noteworthy that a total of 5 essential criteria were considered for the ranking of Mauritius as full democracy, namely the electoral process and pluralism, the functioning of government, the political participation, political culture, and civil liberties. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fate of the election petitions and the decision of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council in this latest appeal case have not only proved the opposition wrong, but also exposed their bad faith. It is, unfortunately, the taxpayer who will have to bear the brunt of such unnecessary and wasteful expenditure. I must add that these payments, I must add, Mr. Speaker, sir, that these payments exclude the expenses incurred or to be incurred in connection with the election petitions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. In his reply, the Honourable Prime Minister mentioned about the huge amount to be incurred by the government for this appeal. Can the Honourable Prime Minister inform the House whether there has been any order by the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council as to cost?
Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to order as to costs, I am informed that following the judgment in this appeal case, a draft order was circulated by the Privy Council among the parties, ordering Mr. Dayal to pay the respondents' costs and for the amount of those costs to be assessed if not agreed upon. The parties had to give their views thereon by 24th of October 2023. However, on 24th October 2023, being the deadline date, Mr. Dayal's representatives wrote to the Privy Council informing that they did not agree with the cost order. La honte. It's a shame, Mr. Speaker. It's a shame. The issue will now be determined by the Privy Council. The reply of the Privy Council on the cost issue is being awaited. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think at least, si cette opposition avait un peu de dignité, parce qu'ils ont contesté à travers plusieurs pétitions en Cour suprême ici, et le seul cas qui est allé au Privy Council, s'ils avaient un peu d'amour-propre, ils auraient pu quand même accéder à la requête, au draft qui a été circulé par le Privy Council pour demander aux partis de payer les frais. Non, ils objectent, ils ne veulent pas payer les frais.
Time is over.
Thank you, Mr.
Time is over. I am announcing the following questions have been withdrawn. B1319, B1321, B1322, B1325, B1328, B1329, B1331, B1369. Question to ministers. Honorable Bouchard Duval.
Yes, B1332.
Mr. Speaker, in the budget speech 2023-2024, the income threshold for registration under the National Database for Vulnerable People was reviewed from 4,000 to 4,600 for an adult and from 2,000 to 3,220 for a child. With the announcements of this new income threshold, a new national database for eligible households has had to be compiled. Household earning a monthly income above 14,650 and not exceeding 18,860 are now eligible for support under the National Database for Vulnerable People. With regards to Part A of the question, the House may wish to note that the list of households under the National Database for Vulnerable People is compiled on a district-wise and not on a constituency-wise basis. I'm informed by the SRM unit that the total number of households with a monthly income above 14,650 and not exceeding 18,860 found eligible under the National Database for Vulnerable People as from 1st July 2023 to date is 279. With your permission, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm tabling the 279 eligible households. With regards to Part B of the question, I'm informed that the number of applications which have not been found eligible under the same national database from 1st July 2023 to date is 335. Regarding Part C of the question, I'm informed by the National Social Inclusion Foundation that under the National Program for Eligible Vulnerable People on the National Database, comprehensive support will be provided to effectively assessing and addressing the vulnerabilities, challenges, and needs of the applicants and connecting beneficiaries to public institutions and NGO support services through a coordinated referral system. I wish to inform the House that the national program will be implemented by NCIF through NGOs having the necessary experience in providing social support and accompanying the vulnerable families. The implementation of this program will be carried out in collaboration with the different ministries dealing with vulnerable people, the Citizen Support Unit, the Mauritius Institute of Training and Development, the Human Resource Development Council. As at date, the NCIF has already constituted a pool of field workers from NGOs who have been provided with necessary training.
Thank you. Can the Honourable Minister state what supporting measures the Ministry has put in place to accompany those families whose request has been rejected and also those people suffering from price raise and who are struggling to have a decent living?
Well, Mr. Speaker, if their applications have been rejected, so it means that they will not be on the National Database for Vulnerable People. But for those who are on the system, so I'm talking of the SRM beneficiaries and those who are on the National Database for Vulnerable People, so there is a proper mechanism which has been put in place to act effectively and also to provide the necessary in-kind support to those who are on the system. We have issued a press communiqué. We have now a data of the families who need support. This has already been compiled. Now officers and will have to visit each household individually for the need assessment, understanding what are their needs and issues, and then provide them with the necessary support. But with regards to those who are not on the system, I'm sorry, we can't do much because as the system is, we are dealing with people who are on the SRM register and people who are on the National Database for Vulnerable Groups.
Madame la ministre, peut-elle considérer que les dossiers qui sont à l'étude et que provision a été faite et seront faites afin que ces personnes puissent entre-temps survivre avec une allocation temporaire, si elle peut considérer?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I must say that since we are here, since 2014, a lot of measures have been taken to help those who are living in difficult situations. So, as you know, we have set up a plan Marshall to give support to those who are on the SRM, but we do realize that there is a system which has to be put in place. We are offering financial support, educational support, helping as much as we can provide housing, and at the same time training to those who are in need to make sure that they do get the necessary support to stand on their feet again and be integrated in society.
Next question.
B1333.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm informed that in 2019, the number of suicides committed was 117, 126 in 2020, 132 in 2021, 106 in 2022, and as of September 2023, 105 suicides have been recorded. With your permission, I am tabling the information pertaining to Part A of the question. With regard to Part B of the question, the common risk factors include the following: mental health conditions such as depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia can increase the risk of suicide. Substance abuse, namely alcohol and drugs, previous suicide, a family history of suicide, access to lethal means, that is, easy access to firearms, medications, or other lethal means can heighten the risk. Social isolation, chronic physical illness, relationship problems, job or financial stress, legal or criminal issues, and stigma and barriers. Mr. Speaker, sir, as regards to Part C of the question, the House may wish to note that this National Suicide Prevention Strategy includes assessment and data collection, which are already being done on prevalence and causes of suicide. This includes demographics, risk factors, and common methods. Moreover, public awareness and education are being carried out to reduce stigma around mental health issues and signs of distress. Furthermore, a mental health action plan 2023-2027 is currently being elaborated by my ministry. This action plan provides for raising awareness on mental health, well-being issues and their impact, help identify suicidal attempts, caters for training of health professionals and educators on suicidal warnings, and the setting up of a hotline to listen and support people at risk of suicide.
Monsieur le Président, il est important d'assurer que les personnes vulnérables reçoivent les soins dont elles ont besoin, surtout avant qu'il ne soit trop tard. Et dans cette optique, l'honorable ministre peut-il nous dire de quelle manière sont prises en charge les personnes qui ont déjà fait une tentative de suicide, et s'il peut aussi nous dire où est-ce qu'une personne en crise suicidaire et souffrance psychologique peut trouver de l'aide?
Mr. Speaker, sir, as I've stated, on the risk factors, the common risk factors of suicide, including mental health conditions, so it means that healthcare professionals are taking care on the preventive aspect of suicide, especially based on these risk factors. Substance abuse, this is also an important part. It's very difficult to get access to these people who are substance abuse, but yet through campaign, we are conducting campaigning on suicide prevention. If I'll keep on going with the history of family of suicide, a family history of suicide, that's also very important, how health professionals are dealing with preventive aspect of suicide. So there is a whole lot of examples and information and protocols already established, how people who are the vulnerable people, where we can intervene on the preventive aspect.
Ma deuxième partie de ma question, j'ai demandé où est-ce qu'une personne peut trouver de l'aide? Est-ce que il a mentionné, l'honorable ministre a mentionné un hotline. Quand est-ce que le hotline sera mis sur pied pour qu'il puisse avoir des professionnels en psychologie pour écouter ces personnes-là sur une base 24/7?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. Already there is a hotline, that is the public suicide hotline, 188 is functional on a 24/7 basis through the Life Plus unit of my ministry. So there is already a hotline which is functional.
MP Ramphal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. B1334.
Mr. Speaker, sir, The Metro Express project is a landmark and unprecedented project in Mauritius, aiming to modernize the public transport system and providing a safe, efficient, sustainable, and alternative mode of transport along the busiest traffic corridor of Mauritius. I need to lay emphasis that the Metro Express project should not be gauged solely on financial considerations, inasmuch that the light rail transit system yields high dividends in terms of environmental, social, and economic benefits to the country. The project therefore trickles down to several aspects of our lives in terms of improved mobility and value creation. Sir, the project has been conceived in such a manner to upgrade and regenerate the urban setup while also integrating with other modes of transport for seamless international intermodal transfers. The project also allowed the enhancement of signaling facilities at railroad junctions and generally improved the road infrastructure nearby the precincts of the light rail stations in order to enhance accessibility and connectivity to transport services. With this in mind, sir, the House would appreciate that the financial assistance graciously extended by the Republic of India has been a game changer, as it allowed government to secure the necessary funding and equity contribution to go ahead with the implementation of the project. Mr. Speaker, sir, as the House is already aware, the Metro Express project is being executed in phases. Accordingly, with regard to Part A of the question, I'm informed that the funds disbursed as at date to the engineering, procurement, and construction contractor Larsen & Toubro for the implementation of the project as at date are as follows. Phases 1 and 2, Port Louis to Rosehill and Port Louis to Cupid, 18.8 billion Mauritian rupees. Phase 3, Rosehill to Eben, 4.55 billion Mauritian rupees. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Metro Express project also heralds opportunities for public-private partnerships to create a win-win situation and for further enhancing accessibility of commuters to the light rail stations. To that end, the construction of an additional light rail station at Phoenix Mall was entirely met by Ascensia Limited, an amount of 198 million Mauritian rupees has been paid to that effect. Sir, besides payment made to the contractor, a fee of 4% of the total project cost amounting to 934 million rupees was to be paid in respect of project management consultancy to Rights Limited for phase 1 to 3. I'm also informed that as a date, an amount of 25 million rupees out of the 934 million rupees is due to be paid to Rights Limited. The Singapore Corporation Enterprise, the SCE, was involved in the feasibility studies for the Metro Express project and was paid an amount of 135 million rupees for the provision of delivery support and advisory services. It is to be highlighted that the services of Rights Limited and SCE were required to successfully steer the execution of this unprecedented undertaking, which is a very complex project involving several subsystems. With regard to Part B of the question, sir, loans totaling to 1.1 billion Mauritian rupees have been extended by the government to the Metro Express Limited in various tranches as from financial year 2019 to 2020. Provision has also been made to earmark an amount of 90 million rupees as loan to MEL during this financial year 2023 to 2024. However, as at date, no amount has been disbursed from the said loan of 90 million rupees yet. Mr. Speaker, sir, the loans are meant to assist MEL in meeting its operational costs due to the project being executed in phases, implying lesser ridership in the initial phase, either as the light rail was operational over a limited stretch at that time. Moreover, with the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic, whereby transport operators were badly stricken in terms of reduction in the number of passengers due to travel restrictions, MEL had to avail loans from the government to cater for the operational expenditures, which are much higher than those of other transport operators due to the complex nature of the light rail operations. Sir, as regards to Part C of the question, I'm informed that the Republic of India provided a line of credit to the Exim Bank of India in respect of the Metro Express project as follows. Phases 1 and 2, 260 USD. Phases 3, 80 million USD. Both lines of credit carry an interest of 1.8% and involve a moratorium period of 7 years from the initial disbursement. Mr. Speaker, sir, I need to point out that in addition to the line of credit, the Government of India has also provided grant funding for the project to the tune of 267 million USD for phases 1 and 2 and 10 million USD for phase 3. The grant funding has been used as equity contribution from the Government of Mauritius to the project. Mr. Speaker, sir, with respect to Part D of the PQ, I have to inform the House that the Metro Express project has been completed within the estimated project cost, that is 18.8 billion Mauritian rupees for phases 1 and 2 from Portis to QPIP, and 4.55 Mauritian rupees for phase 3 from Rosehill to Rétui. Mr. Speaker, sir, this type of the state-of-the-art mega infrastructural project is unique in the Indian Ocean, and its accomplishment says it all. I would like to seize this opportunity to express our gratitude to all the governmental bodies, ministries, authorities, MEL, the consultant and the contractor, L&T for their hard work and commitment in delivering this project to the citizens of our country, and our heartfelt appreciation should also be lavishly extended to the Honourable Prime Minister for his undisputed leadership in driving this project from the start, and Honourable Modi ji and the Government of India for their generosity, which have been instrumental in the materializing of this iconic project.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Can I ask the Honourable Minister, with regards to phase 4 of the project from Côte d'Or to Rétui, I know that that particular phase has been put on hold given the fact that there is a legal dispute in India with one of the contractors. Can we know if there is any development in that respect, the starting date of the project and the completion date?
Although this question does not strictly pertain to phase 4 of the project, Mr. Speaker, sir, I will just reply to inform the House that in fact consideration was being given to extend the light rail corridor towards Saint-Pierre and Côte d'Or, following the conduct of a feasibility study based on a list of premises, namely integrated developments, both public and private, in the region where the light rail would pass. But in view of the fact that the planned developments, Mr. Speaker, sir, are at the early stages, and there is a slow uptake of private projects in the regions of Moka, Saint-Pierre and Côte d'Or, the extension of the light rail alignment towards Saint-Pierre and Côte d'Or has been deferred.
With regards to the loans that
Yes, but with regard to the insinuation or allegation made about legal case, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is no legal case.
Next question.
B 1335. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Commission of Inquiry on Drug Trafficking had in its report recommended, among others, the setting up of a central database connecting all importers, distributors, and pharmacists so that all transactions relating to the controlled drugs listed under Schedule 1, narcotics, Schedule 3, psychotropic drugs, and Schedule 4, precursors of the Dangerous Drug Act 2000 be recorded upon the instructions of the Pharmacy Board. In this respect, my ministry, in collaboration with the Mauritius Revenue Authority, after consultation with different stakeholders, including retail pharmacists, wholesale pharmacists, importers of chemicals, private clinics, among others, has developed a web-based application for the proper control of precursors and dangerous drugs. Mr. Speaker, sir, accordingly, on 23rd March 2022, the electronic drug register for the control of dangerous drugs was officially launched, marking a significant milestone in our effort to combat the illicit trade of these substances. This online drug register provides a robust platform for all parties involved, including importers, manufacturers, exporters, wholesalers, retailers, and other stakeholders, to seamlessly record and track transactions from the moment of importation right through to sale to the general public. This encompasses products involved in remanufacturing and importation. This platform offers a number of benefits, including the ability to track end-to-end transactions across the whole supply chain, including products involved in remanufacture and exportation, embedded risk management capabilities to aid enforcement agencies such as the Pharmacy Board, Customs, and Police to effectively and efficiently track sales and inventories, improve visibility and control over the supply chain of precursor and dangerous drugs, and reduce risk of diversion and illicit trafficking. Mr. Speaker, sir, as from 1st June 2022, the platform for control of dangerous drugs has been implemented in the private sector by my ministry, and since then, the platform has been upgraded and customized to cater for the needs of the users. The control measures will be implemented in the public sector after the implementation of e-health. This platform is now being tested by private hospitals, and public hospitals will start the testing of the said platform in the coming weeks. Mr. Speaker, sir, moreover, amendments have been brought to the Dangerous Drug Act in the Finance Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2023 for the setting up of an electronic dangerous drugs register for all stakeholders to record all transactions related to controlled drugs. It is noteworthy that access to this platform is restricted, and an authorized body will have access to information pertaining to its field only through a logging system. As such, customs officers will have access only to transactions related to items listed under Schedule 4 precursors only. I'm further informed that the implementation of the platform is progressing well, and I'm confident that it will play a significant role in improving the control of precursor and dangerous drugs in Mauritius. As at date, 243 stakeholders are using this platform.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, can Honourable Minister inform the House how many of these psychotropic drugs have been seized by the ADSU since 2022? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in 2022, so the drugs called sedatives, tranquilizers, and buprenorphine, so the amount seized by the authorities being 307,566 tablets. So this is the information.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, can Honourable Minister also inform the House, will this electronic drug register be made mandatory for the public and health sector as well? Public and private health sector as well?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, already it is being implemented in the private sector, and as I stated in my reply, it will be implemented in the public sector once we will be implementing the e-health. So that will be coming in the next 1.5 years.
Next question.
B1336.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Road Development Authority is responsible for the construction, care, and maintenance and improvement of motorways and main roads. In this respect, one of its duties is to plan, design, and supervise the construction and reconstruction of bridges and culverts located on the motorways and the main roads. I'm informed by the RDA that there are around 175 bridges and some 500 box culverts under its purview. Mr. Speaker, sir, under the National Flood Management Programme, a series of these bridges are being upgraded to cater for a 100 years design life and hydraulic capacity to ensure that they withstand flooding owing to climate change. Regarding part A and B of the questions, I'm informed that the total amount disbursed as from the year 2020 for the reconstruction of bridges and culverts for both purposes of addressing structural deficiencies and hydraulic capacity is 574.4 million in respect of the following. Firstly, 23 bridges and culverts which have already been reconstructed for a total amount of 439.9 million, and 7 ongoing projects for a total amount of 134.5 million. I'm further informed, Mr. Speaker, sir, that following regular assessment of the structural integrity of the bridges, with the RDA carries out on one hand, and taking into consideration the need for the upgrading bridges and culverts for 100 years design, on the other hand, 14 other projects for a total amount of 791.8 million are proposed to be constructed in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. May I ask the Honourable Minister, he mentioned in his reply about 175 bridges, and I note that only 44 have been or are being reconstructed or upgraded. Can he explain this considerable gap?
Mr. Speaker, sir, the state of all bridges and culverts are regularly being monitored. The rehabilitation of bridges depends on the overall state of the bridge and is measured by the overall bridge index. Bridges are high overall bridge index, that is high defects, are prioritized to be rehabilitated, reconstructed, and are among those 44 bridges. Other bridges with low overall bridge index, that is low or no defects, do not need any rehabilitation works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, some of the bridges date back to colonial times. Can the Honourable Minister inform the House whether any measures are being taken by his ministry to preserve those bridges?
Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a challenge that we are having at this current time with, in the face of climate change. One, keeping those bridges, and at the same time trying to have sufficient hydraulic capacity. One of the examples that we are facing currently is, for example, at the Four-Pier Bridge, which is an old bridge that we are trying to preserve, and this has caused quite some delay in the project. But nevertheless, we have done what it entails to preserve. The state of all bridges and culverts, including those which date back colonial times, are nevertheless regularly being monitored. The rehabilitation of bridges, once again, it depends on the overall bridge index. Bridges with high overall bridge index are again prioritized. So we are in fact dealing with those bridges, preserving them. Another example is in our own constituency, Cavendish Bridge, which we have renovated and is now in perfect condition. Thank you.
Honourable members, the following questions have been withdrawn. B1337, B1341, B1351, B1357, B1359, B1368, B1372, B1379, B1340, B1346, B1354, B1358, B1367, B1371, B1374. Honourable members, at this stage, suspend the sitting for an hour and a half.